And so we've got Cathy Koetsier with us, and then we will have Randall Hardy with us at 4:30.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me.
All busy here now. So
thank you.
I loved everything you had to say, Alice. That was awesome.
Yes. So in case any of you didn't pick it up, Cathy is from South Africa, like I am, although she's lived in the UK now many, many years and was actually born in the UK. But that was the
story altogether.
Yeah, she moved in when she was 9 days old, I believe.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. And I've known Cathy actually since we lived in South Africa. So this makes her a very special person indeed. And we actually lived, and I do mean literally, around the corner from each other when Cathy had well, no, you'd had your first child, I'd had my first child, but by the time we had our second, we were living around the corner from each other, and we had a lot to do with each other. And
long before we knew that we would home educate.
Long before, but Cathy started, you started quite early on. And obviously I thought you were a Fruit Loop, but I got over that pretty quickly, so thankfully. But it's been an amazing journey. And Cathy, for many years and I think you've still got your blog and you've got podcasts now as well. You unschooled, you were an unschooler, and you came from a faith background as a Christian.
Yeah.
And you had a blog for anyone interested in unschooling as a Christian family. But you also have a podcast now, and your children, you've got a child at home educates, so also one of these long-term veteran home educators who's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt and then turned it inside out and worn it that way as well.
Yeah, so, sometimes feel like an old couch that needs a new cover, but
yeah. So she gets the extra star, for that. So Cathy, just give us a little bit of a background on yourself, please.
Well, I think the first thing I just want to say is I think it's really cool that Joy Baker's book was published in 1964, because that's the year I was born. And it's amazing because she really was a pioneer, and I was influenced by her when I first heard of her from Leendert van Oostrom, who ran the Pestalozzi Trust. And I hunted down a copy of her book. It was super hard to get a copy. It cost me a lot of money. It had to be sent to me from the UK. And it's very precious because I still have that book. And it was one of the first books I read that really highlighted for me that as a parent, I had the unique opportunity and responsibility to stand in the gap for my children with regard to what outside influences would impact their lives. And I think we really picked up that mandate. But back in the early days in South Africa, when we first learned about home education, it was illegal in South Africa. So things hadn't changed yet. And then they did change, fortunately, by the time my eldest was of school-going age. But it was a scary time. One of my biggest anxieties was like I had this horrible fear that, they were going to come take my children away from me. And Leendert van Oostrom was very instrumental there in really reassuring me that as a parent, I had rights, not just privileges with regard to my children. And he built a lot of confidence in me. I just have 2 quotes here. I'm just going to read them from Joy Baker's book. She said, which is totally, it really sums up what I believe about how children should be educated. The place for a child to be brought up and trained is in the home. Instruction is only part of education, and it should be given to suit the individual. And then she also said, no act of parliament is capable of deciding the upbringing and destiny of any individual child, and any act which restricts the natural right of the parent to send to cafe for the child is in breach of a higher law than that of parliament. So that was her position. That's what gave her the boldness to do what she did, because she was so absolutely certain of that. And I think for us, we became equally certain that this was what we wanted for our children, and that we were not going to compromise on it, and we became incredibly stubborn. The time when we started home educating, we didn't know any other home educators. We didn't actually know what home education was when we started doing it. We'd been doing it for a year when somebody told us it's called home education. So we home educated simply because we didn't have a second car. So I couldn't take my child to preschool when all her little friends went. And so I said, oh, don't worry, we'll do school at home, which is what we started doing. And yeah, we never looked back. We always said we'd take it a year at a time. But to be honest, I don't think we ever had any intention of putting our children in school, because at my core conviction is that schools are not healthy environments for children. And I stand by that, even though I know it's going against the stream when I say it. I was hugely influenced, first of all, by Charlotte Mason. I read all her books. They were absolute life to me. They were wonderful. And then by John Holt. And John Holt actually wrote 10 books in all, and I have read them all, and I have them on my shelf. They are my treasured possessions. I absolutely love them. Same thing. They were hunted down for me by my aunt in America. Cost a lot of money. One copy that was sent to me, which was out of print, actually cost $100, which is crazy. But I read them all and devoured them, and they really established a foundation for me for what I really believed about how children should learn. And we progressed from there. And of course, John Holt, in turn, was influenced hugely by Ivan Illich and his whole concepts of deschooling society, particularly with regard to healthcare and education. And then John Holt was also hugely influenced by A.S. Neal, who founded Summerhill School, which is not very far from us. And I've always promised myself one of these days I'm going to go there, but I just haven't done it yet. But I've read a lot about Summerhill School, and I've read all A.S. Neal's books. And A.S. Neal was a very profound and wise man. He was a man who actually had been hurt by religion and moved away from it. So we had some different ideas there, because for me, I am fundamentally a Christian, and I haven't found that being a Christian has interfered with me unschooling my children, although at the time I was told that it would, but it didn't. So yeah, that's kind of, I think for Craig and me, fundamental questions that we wanted our children to have the freedom to consider was, first of all, who am I? And secondly, why am I here? And I think that when children are sent to school, there's no opportunity for them to ponder these questions, because they're told who they should be and they're told what they should do, and they never have a chance to hear those voices. And then what happens is, when they're in their 20s or 30s or 40s or 60s, somewhere along the line, they have a midlife crisis and they discover that what they're doing is not what they wanted to do at all. And we wanted our children to have that freedom to really explore what they were interested in. I have 5 children. They've done the most diverse things, and even they're all very different people, but even inside their own lifespans, they've done such diverse things. I mean, I had a son who was in the middle of doing a maths degree when he decided that he'd like to be a professional artist. You know, that's the kind of thing. I had a daughter who was doing a BTech in performing arts, who decided that she'd like to become an economist, and went off in that direction. So the children just had such freedom to say, well, this is what I'm interested in, and this is what I'm going to explore. And I loved what you said just now, Juliet. I actually wrote it down. You said, you're not the sage on the stage, the guide on the side.
Yeah, I can't take the credit for that, but I think it's an amazing way to put it.
It's a really cool statement, because I realized I'm not the teacher, I'm the facilitator. You know, I'd only had a school model. So when I started home educating, I was teaching my children. I loved teaching. I still love teaching. So I was really very happy. But over a period of time, I began to realize that that wasn't quite what my children needed, and I became more of a facilitator. So yeah, that's probably in a nutshell.
Yeah, I remember having the realization that it didn't actually matter how much fun I made things. You know, how much I tried to do things in a way that would be attractive to the children and catch their interest. If they were not interested, they were not interested, and they would not engage, or they would not remember it.
Told me about KONOS originally, and KONOS was unit studies, and they were wonderful. I mean, I spent hours creating these beautiful unit studies about all sorts of subjects. I worked so hard. I'm not saying the children didn't enjoy them, but in actual fact, it was so labor intensive for me that it wouldn't have been sustainable by the time I had 5 children.
Yeah, well, I used to say what my current approach is, you by all means do the stuff with your kids, have fun, but think of it as we're having fun, we're creating memories. Don't expect that they're necessarily going to learn anything, because it's only up to them if they're going to learn it. So, I can stand on my head and do whatever I like until I'm blue in the face, but if the child's engagement is not there, and that's the very big problem that we have with the system and the joy of home education.
I remember one of my daughters, she was very interested in animals, and she walked in, this was just after Christmas one year, she was about 9 years old. She had a piece of paper and she had written down what her intention was with regard to her learning for the year. She had decided she wants to learn about birds. She had drawn up a whole list of what she was going to do, what outing she wanted me to take her on, and how she was going to go about it. So thanks, Mom, I've got my curriculum for the year. I don't really need your help except for lifts. And that's how it was. And sure enough, by the end of the year, what she knew about birds was quite incredible. And she was self-taught, because it was what she was interested in. It wasn't something that I'd spent hours planning and preparing for her. It was just when she asked for help that I'd help her. I bought her some nice books. We helped her to find some nice resources. We went to the Hawk Conservancy, joined it, and went there a lot of times. And I just felt like doors opened for her, and she had opportunities offered to her that were in her interest zone, which was amazing for me. It was kind of a bit like, move over. Life will guide you. God will guide you,
Yeah.
And so I didn't have that enormous burden that can be on your shoulders if you're taking all the responsibility for the child.
Yeah. I think I shared a post early on Facebook today about our home educating journey in honor of Joy Baker Day. And I'm encouraging people to do that today. Use the day to promote the benefits of home education for your family. Share some lovely pictures. And I shared quite a few pictures, but I could have shared so many more of this journey, because it's been such a rich journey. We've done so much. Loads of ups and downs as well, loads of difficulties that we had to navigate, but the children kind of also learning from those experiences. And I think that is why not all learning experiences are going to be positive ones. Some are going to come out of negative situations, and how we model to our children, how we deal with that.
I've got two comments on that. So I think my first one is that I got an education because children were interested in things that I hadn't thought of. And yet, because I was facilitating their learning, I discovered things and became interested in things that I wouldn't have been interested without. And I'm watching my daughter, who's home educating now, and I feel so envious sometimes, because they've just been to this wonderful bee place in Devon where they learned all about bees. And I was like, oh, I wanted to go with on that, The second thing, where you're talking about the negatives, life actually is full of challenge. And I think that if we feel that in our home education we have to create this rosy environment for our children 24/7, that's not realistic. So when I was pregnant, I had incredibly low blood pressure, and if I did too much, I would feel incredibly faint. So I spent a lot of time on my bed, and so we did a lot of stuff from the bed, and I was thinking, okay, so what can I do for my children if I'm not able to be as active as normal? And we realized, well, there's lots of things we can do. We can read, for example, and reading became an activity that we thoroughly enjoyed and never actually stopped doing. And just the reality of the fact that, Mom isn't feeling that well at the moment. Where can we help her? How can we support her? Like you mentioned, your children helping to raise their siblings. I had the same experience. My youngest child, I hardly even got to see her because she had 4 adoring siblings who kept taking her off to do things. And I'd be like, where's my baby? So even in the midst of challenge, we immigrated to the UK in 2005. You also went through that, Juliet. And that is probably one of the most difficult things a family can ever do. I look back on it and I shudder. It was so hard. And yet it's something we went through together, and we did it together, and we built memories together. And now the children are all adults, and every now and then we'll talk about it. And actually, even though a lot of it was painful, it actually shaped us and grew us and matured us. So it's real life, I think when you're home educated, it allows you to interface with real situations as opposed to artificial situations.
Have you had much chance to look at the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill? Are you aware of what it contains?
I did have a look at it. I haven't been as involved as I could be.
Yeah.
I've had a lot going on in my own life, but I have read it. I'm horrified at it, but I kind of like to shake my head because I think it's nothing new and lessons haven't been learned. And that's so annoying because I was very involved with the Badman Review. I was involved in South Africa with a lot of home education legislation stuff. And I just think it's the same old song sheet. When will you ever get a new song sheet? And it's highly annoying. I mean, this is what you were talking about earlier. Joy Baker actually was challenging issues that are being challenged today.
Yeah,
I just think, why so much wasted energy? There were so many issues for our education authorities to deal with in schools. I mean, every week you can read on the BBC, which is supposed to be not particularly in favor of home
education. Not so much anymore.
You can read there about things that are happening in schools, about children being abused in schools, children being sexually molested in schools, head teachers that are criminals. I just think, like, why on earth are they not doing their own housekeeping? Like, clean your own house first, and then you can offer to clean ours. So, I just get frustrated about it, to be honest.
It is very frustrating because they keep this whole idea, what we were talking about earlier with Alice as well, is, this whole idea of what learning is. Is that there's signs that this bill would be used, and Michelle can back me up on this, that this bill would be used to try and push the school model, where an expectation of a school model, and that kind of thing. We've got some rumors about things like that.
And I can absolutely tell you that model would not have worked for 3 of my 5 children.
Yeah, so this is my question.
Probably have been fine, but 3 would absolutely have failed with it. 2 of my children are extremely dyslexic and only learn to read in their teens. Yeah, they would not have succeeded with the school model.
Yeah, so this is my question, is if that bill was enacted like right now, and you were now a home educator with your children, how would it impact you?
It would have had very serious impact. Because for example, if I was required to show evidence of my children's learning, and my children's learning was very uneven and appeared from a school measurement system, it would have appeared not to be happening because our son was not reading. So we were his readers. We just read for him. We never made an issue about him not being able to read. We just said, well, we'll read for him. He will figure it out. He did. By the way, today he holds a master's degree. So, I don't agree with this idea that there's only one sensitive window of opportunity, and if you miss it, your child is a mess for the rest of their lives. It's nonsense. People learn throughout their lives forever until the day we die. We will still be learning. We might not always be enjoying the learning, but we're learning, So I think there would have been serious implications. I think that with both my son and one of my daughters, we would have been told that we are not meeting the requirements, that the children are not learning because there's not enough worksheets or proof that they're learning. Most of my children's learning was not visible. It was discursive, it was conversational, it was through them experiencing, it was very experiential learning. I learned to get out of their way and not interfere. I learned to trust them. And I can tell you today, all of my children are adults. All of them are extremely well educated. All of them have, tertiary degrees and various qualifications. Nobody is a social misfit. I was told they would be. Nobody is uneducated. Nobody is sitting around unable to get a job. They're all gainfully employed. They're all sensible, well-adjusted people. Juliet can validate that statement. So the things that we were told would be a problem were not a problem. And I think that had we had an unsympathetic local authority coming into our home, they would have been very concerned. My children spent 90% of their time outside with their horses. It was incredibly hard to pin them down, to get them to do anything that looked like schoolwork. They would sometimes do that kind of thing late at night. But if the sun was shining, they were outside. We had horses. That's what we did. That was the curriculum.
But it's such a natural way. And I think the thing that really, this is what really bothers me. This is the crux of the matter, because is this belief that just because I'm a teacher and I'm providing this you are walking away with all that information and that knowledge. You know, how many children in that classroom are only maybe getting 10% of what's been said in that class or done, and retaining it a year later and a year later. You know, there's that quote, education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire.
That's right.
And I have another friend who used to say, it's a bit like stuffing yourself with food. You just put it in, you don't digest it, you just swallow it, and you feel, and then you go and you like have to vomit it all out on the exam paper, and you feel so much better afterwards, but it's gone. You're just retaining the information for that one purpose. It's not about mastery, it's not about lifelong learning, it's not about building good foundation.
And it's not relevant. This is my biggest grievance, because children are expected to learn stuff that has absolutely no context in their day-to-day lives. So what the heck is it for? You know?
Exactly.
And
who is it for?
Effort into it.
Yeah, but who is it for?
Yeah.
And it's not for the children. I can tell you now, it's not for the children. It's
not for anyone, because they sold this lie that they're going to get great jobs, and they don't.
Yeah.
You know, I know so many graduates who can't get a decent job.
Yeah. And it is a lie. I think the thing is that there are so many lies about, and that people have believed. And those lies form the basis and foundation for this bill.
That's right. And so we have all this concern, you know, because unfortunately these children aren't getting a proper education, so they're not going to succeed in life. And it's like, okay. So I did want to say something on this subject, though. I mean, I am a Christian, and there's a beautiful story in the Bible about a man called Nehemiah. And Nehemiah wanted to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. The wall had been destroyed, and he wanted it to be rebuilt. And there's a lovely narrative in Nehemiah 4-6, telling about what happened when Nehemiah began to rebuild this wall. And it's interesting how the people around Nehemiah and his helpers began to react. So they reacted with anger. I mean, I'm just reading my notes here, what I'd summarize. So there was anger. There was ridicule. People said, who do they think they are to restore the wall? Even the foxes will be able to climb on it. There was anger, like, what a cheek, who's given them authority to do it. There was plotting. They plotted together to come and prevent and to stir up trouble so that the wall wouldn't be built. There was fatigue. The builders began to get tired because they were constantly being harassed. There were threats. It says here, the enemies said, before they know it or see it, we'll be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work, you know. And so there's all this stuff going on. And Nehemiah didn't know what to do because everybody was getting very discouraged. And then he had this idea, and he said, all right, what we have to do is we have to build and protect at the same time. So what we're going to do at any given time is we will build with one hand, and we will protect with a sword in our hands with the other hand. And they set up teams to protect and teams to build at all times. And they rebuilt the wall. And then kind of goes on and says, like, when the wall was built, everybody was like shocked because they never thought that they'd be able to do it. And I've always loved the story because for me, it's such an analogy of our role as home educating parents, because with one hand, we are facilitating our children's learning, and with the other hand, we are protecting their rights to that learning. You know, and we really do stand in the gap. We are the ones who are going to either allow the wall of their education to be built as it should, or we are going to be the ones that allow it to be destroyed. And it really is up to us. And it's such a serious, horrible mandate, because in actual fact, you know, we love this idea that children are raised in a community and everybody supports our children's best interests all the way up to the top, including our government. But the reality is there were very different ideas about how children should be educated. You know, one thing that Leander had said to me way back then, and I argued with him a lot about it, was that we have to protect the right of all parents to home educate or to educate their children as they see fit. Whether they want their children to be in private schools or, you know, government schools or religious schools or home educated or whatever it is that they want. We have to defend the right of parents to make that choice. And if we start saying, oh, well, these parents are okay, but those parents are not okay, then we undermine all of our freedom to make that choice.
Very true.
Yeah, and we actually do have systems in place. I've always emphasized it, and I love to continue to emphasize it, that our local authorities are definitely empowered to intervene where a child is at risk. They do not need further legislation. They just keep doing that because it's a smokescreen to avoid the reality that they are failing in their mandate to protect children. And this little girlie that recently died, Shara, I forgot her name.
Sorry, Sharif.
She was well known to services that could have intervened and didn't, and it's just a cop-out to blame home education.
Yeah, sadly that is true, and I think this is why we do get angry, because of the injustice of it.
But it's very easy to feel helpless in the face of that, and I think that's why the story of Nehemiah encourages me so much, because it was an impossible task. It's impossible to rebuild the wall of a city when you're being harassed and bullied and attacked on all fronts, but they did it.
And I don't think it's impossible for us to push back on this bill.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's impossible for us to get through and see change. But it does take many people. Many people making little efforts will make one big effort. So I do want to just emphasize that again. And our freedom is something we have to fight for. It's something that was fought for, in previous wars. And we need to keep fighting for it. And it might not always look like it's different kinds of freedom. But this particular freedom is about parents having that freedom to be parents. I
think a lot of people think it's a home education issue, but it isn't. It's actually about parents, all parents, and the intrusion of the state in parental choice.
Absolutely. So anyway, Cathy, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us. It's always lovely to hear from you and hear your wisdom. You could perhaps pop in the comments just some of the links to your podcasts and things like that if people want to come and find you.
Sure.
Please feel free to go and pop that in the comments on the Facebook Live. That would be really good. As I said to Fiona, I mean, if you want to hang in here and listen in with us, or if you want to go and watch
the whole time, even though I was getting really cross at one point.
You feel free to stay in the Zoom or hop out and go and watch on Facebook. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely to have you on this afternoon and celebrating Joy Baker Day with us.
Thank you, Juliet.
So much.
Bye.